Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is HEROQUEST, and today it's time for another BWODECAST. This time I don't have any special guests. However, I did pose a question last week in my Discord, the Amalgam Archive, which you can always go check out. It is always linked in the description below. And in my channel, the BWODECAST Q&A section, where I come up with topics for this series, I asked, what are your predictions for Against the Ogre Horde? Do you think it'll include added content? How will it differ from the EU edition? Extras? More ogres? Bigger? Ogres? Lady ogres? A new hero right in the box? A warlock lunch? It's hard to say for me. I would like everybody to sound off. Comments below what your predictions are, what your guesses are, and I'll go through the different comments that were offered up in this Discord channel. This Discord channel is different from all of the other channels in my Discord. I post these results on here, on the YouTube channel. So, if you post there, just be mindful that your stuff could be actually in the video, could appear in the video. And stay on topic. Guys, as a podcast, this is going to be very graphically minimal. You can listen to this on the way to work while you are building Magic the Gathering decks or whatever card game the kids are playing now. There's a Final Fantasy. I think that got an update, an expansion. What do you call the new card pack drops whenever they appear as a group? A line, a collection? Whatever they are, I think that they recently had a new release, so it's still going on. Dragon Ball Super was really big several years ago in my town. I don't know if people are still playing that. I never got into it. I even started to, but I decided that I just hated it. I just did not want anything to do with it at all. So I got out of that as well. I think that it's possible that we'll see... Well, I've had some predictions about it, and those have changed a little bit over time based on the different conventions that Avalon Hill has decided to kind of burst through in bringing back content. Ribby says, I'd like to see double wide doors. While that would alter the contents of the quests themselves, it would be pretty interesting to see them for additional quests. And then also, provide us with these double wide doors that we can now use for the rest of our HEROQUEST games. Double wide doors can be used in any room and in a lot of the corridors leading to and from the corridors, and also they could be placed directly in double wide corridors. So a double wide door would be great, and mechanically it would be so much different than a regular door because when you open it, both tiles are now opened up. You now have two spaces that monsters can encroach upon. Doorway combat becomes a lot more engaging, a lot more difficult to pull off in a safe manner. So I like that one a lot. I said these ogres are huge. Why shouldn't they have huge doors? Sergeant House came up with, what if the goblins have the ability to transform into ogres, like were-ogres? Make it random too, like when you defeat a goblin, you roll 2d6, and on 11 or 12, they transform and pop up with half the ogre BP and defense stats. That one seems out of left field, but I think that there is some merit to it. I think it could be possible to have half ogres in general. I kind of suggested that orcs are just goblin ogres, but I mean, on a serious note, you could definitely have some half ogres. You could definitely have things that become ogres. The object or monster transforming into other monster is a concept in and of itself. You could almost say like it's a mimic, but obviously there's differences between a mimic, which is a monster that is pretending to be an inanimate object, versus an inanimate object that is just being used as a disguise. I mean, the more I talk about it, the more we're going to find the similarities. I don't want to split hairs. It's different when it's actually a goblin that's disguising itself as a barrel versus a mimic barrel. You know what I mean? I skipped right over Jace's comment. I'm going to make up for that now. He said, I hope it is the 7 main quests with 3 smaller quests where the heroes can stock up on supplies, earn those healing potions, Maybe quests designed with 2 to 3 heroes in mind, or solo quests for any hero. Would like animal companions, maybe some rats, ferrets, raccoons, or weasels. Maybe keyword the spell mechanics and put them on cards, tiles, stone doors. If Ogre has the walls, they would be awesome in translucent colored plastic, similar to the fire and illusion monsters in Magic the Gathering. AOTP? Yes, that's what I thought. Arena of the Planeswalkers. I've got that. And I've got the transparent, the translucent colored monsters in that. That is a cool effect. That is a cool effect. Imagine the specters, but a drop of dye was put in there as well. And there's some gradient tricks you can do with these as well. So that would be pretty neat to see. I think that I don't know what to put my money on. I don't know which side I would bet on. Would Avalon Hill release the plastic bases and cardboard inserts? Because they've been doing that with everything except the doors. They've been doing that with the mirror components. They have them with the Rise of the Dread Moon. I think it's totally possible they would just continue to adapt that standard for the walls. I've got my gold cup today. Green screen is trying to blank it out. There we go. I had to get this cup when I saw it. I think I saw it at Dollar General several years ago now. It's been accidentally microwaved once. So that's given a very strange, like, spider web cracking along the outside top half, because that's kind of like a foil that's around it, sort of adhering to the ceramic. It was a cheap cup, so it doesn't bother me, but I got it because it reminded me of the gold cartridge Zelda NES game that I had a long time ago. So I was calling it my Zelda cup at home. So continuing on with the discussion. Leorlik came up with a bunch of ideas and linked to a thread over in Kurgan's Discord. Kurgan is the XSC home of HEROQUEST fans. We won't visit that Discord because I don't have explicit permission or implied permission to show that stuff on a video. I'm not like other YouTubers. They'll look at other people's stuff all day long. They'll scroll through Twitter comments, Facebook comments. They'll just out everybody. And I don't want to do that. I really, really try to ask if I can. But I also want the discussion to stay here in the channel that I made for it. But anyways, Sergeant House went on to ask, do you think they'll keep all the original components within the Ogre Horde or add a few new extras like dice or ogre-sized furniture other than the updated throne? And Leorlik replied, nothing confirmed yet, but all the hints imply they will add, similar to Frozen Horror and Mage of the Mirror. I think it's tough to say. I don't know if this would be like what we're calling the medium or small box expansions, or if it would be more like a big box expansion. They've dropped a few, literally 3 big box expansions now. We couldn't blame them for going back and dropping a medium size, and they might do that. It's based on an expansion, an EU expansion that really did not have a lot of extras with it. And I think the popularity of this has really reached its peak. And it might have definitely trended a little bit during Rise of the Dread Moon. But it'll be really, really interesting to see where this goes, since this is essentially re-releases of the previously European exclusive content. We're seeing Against the Ogre Horde, which is my favorite expansion. It's the one I was the most excited for. And I'm certain that this paves the way. It could already even be in development, because I know these games can take anywhere from up to 18 months to go through their various stages of development. We could already have Wizards of Morcar, or whatever other name the Rose is known by, in the offices of Avalon Hill, in the presentation rooms, waiting for some enterprising soul to leak pictures of it for us. Somebody who, probably like an intern or something. Nobody named Chris, assuredly. Somebody with a camera and just a chaotic, dreadful streak. It could happen. But the ogres are on on the way. So that's what I'm the most excited about. Really excited, and I'm kind of apprehensive too, because I know Avalon Hill will change things if they call it fun. So we all have different ideas of fun. There is no canonical fun, so it's a bit strange to hear, is this fun? We're going to change it so that it's fun. What your version of fun may be could be vastly different from my version. I'm glad that we have the ability to homebrew, and certainly people did homebrew the old game. Would be really cool to see things released as they were, and then have the homebrews suggested from the other side. I think that's the way it should be. I've said this a million times in different forms, so I'm going to try not to repeat it or go off on that tangent again. But if we could see, it's so hard for me to predict at this point because there's so many different conventions they could very well break. There's so many different things that they've trended towards doing and then not did, or vice versa. So it's very difficult to say. But I think our Against the Ogre Horde is going to be and I've been complimented on my predictions. But I don't know with this one, guys. I don't know with this one. I'm not confident in this. I think it's very 50-50 split. It could be a medium box. It could be a large box. Just because it's a medium box, though, or a small box, whatever you want to call it, there's only two different sizes, doesn't mean that it couldn't have added content. It just means there may not be a reason to have a huge box full of plastic this time. It's very possible that they'll give us great, very large sculpts for the ogres. They don't really need to, because the original ogres only took up one square. It would be a bit of I think it would feel wrong if the ogres took up more than one square, even if they were like the chief and the warlord. If they even keep those names, I don't know, but I think they should keep just one tile. They could have an oversized ogre, a brand new monster introduced in an added on quest. And this could be like an ogre giant. It could be ogre king. It could be something that implies a very large, just a brute or a hulk of a monstrous ogre. And this, friends, could be the unnamed monster that we can use to proxy various very important ogre characters. We have this, with the chieftain, who I think was only used just one time in the original quest pack. And of course we have unique sculpts of the other ogres as well, and they were just used very sparingly. And of course they were used in place of named characters. So the suggestion that I just had, it kind of goes out the window when you consider that. But it is a possibility, and I think it would be really, really cool to have giant ogres that weren't the ogres that are used in the actual quests. Not in the original quests, not in the 7 original. I do agree that it's very possible we'll see an additional 3 quests or more. People like the 10 quest convention. They think that is the standard. It's tough to agree with that when the game system had 14. Keller's Keep and Return of the Witch Lord had 10. The EU expansions had 5 and 7, and then the US character expansions, what I'm calling the character expansions, the Elf and Barbarian quest packs, they had 3 solo 7 group. That was the only time that convention was used. And folks still kind of use the convention as though it's a trend, as though it's going on now, but it's not. It hasn't been. Rise of the Dreadmoon broke it immediately with 10 group quests. They had ample opportunity to give us quests for the night, solo quests, and they did not. So I think that it's possible they could add on group quests as well as solo quests. They could have 3 group quests to give us 10 total group quests. They could give us more than 3. They could give us 6. They could give us 7 more. I know people have been saying, they'd like to see, or they think it's possible to see Wizards of Morcar grouped in with this. I'm gonna predict now that's not the case. There's no way they're grouping Wizards of Morcar in with this. And this will be the prediction that nails my credibility. Either either permanently in stone or in a coffin, because if it comes out, I will be absolutely shattered. I will be eating crow. I will be eating caracal. I will be I'll be very, very discredited if we see Wizards of Morcar, the EXPAC, in with the Ogre Horde. I don't see it though. I don't see the sense in it. I've never seen the sense in it. I know that I've had discussions at random in bits and pieces over the months and maybe even years talking about the inclusion just to beef it up, just to make it worth money. But I've never believed that it needed to be beefed up to be worth money, because the money is a variable, right? It doesn't have to be $40. It doesn't have to cost the same thing as Rise of the Dread Moon. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. It's an opportunity, to be sure. It is an opportunity to introduce more. And on the business side of things, which we know very little about, it's an opportunity to adjust the price based on what you're putting in there, based on what you think people may pay without alienating any customers, because you want to sell to the most people possible. You don't want it to be inaccessible, certainly, but you need to have a return on investment, and you need to get a profit, and you need to be able to continue making expansions. So it's a very, very sensitive double-edged sword that has to be wielded constantly and carefully, and with much adaptation for change, if possible, while also being able to multitask long-term plans and making any last-minute changes as those plans come down the pipeline to reflect customer feedback while there is still time, while there's still any chance of doing so. Some things are past a point where they can implement any feedback. Others are not, but it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen what kind of conventions will be broken, if any, for better or for worse. It remains to be seen what kind of stuff could be changed for against the Ogre Horde. I think we're going to see a lot of faith to the original. These ogres didn't have 10 BP. I don't know if we're going to see 5 BP ogres, so that Avalon Hill's keeping everything nice and consistent with their ogres from Mage of the Mirror. I would love to see the variable body track. I've said that time and time again. I understand the possibility of them dropping it. So certainly that's something they could do. It would make me sad, but I'm not going to say that I don't understand. I'll just say I do prefer the body track. I love the body track, and I'm very happy to know that friends, watchers of the channel from the EU who played as a kid also love the variable body track. There's some that aren't fans of it, but it's nice to hear that there's folks that are. Kordak came in with a comment to continue the actual topic of the BWODECAST. Based on Carmine's answers to some of Kurgan's questions from the Gen Con interview, I suspect we will see some sort of increase in content. What that might be is less clear. The suggestion, however, seemed to indicate that 10 quests would be better than 7. This implies that, in addition to other unrelated comments, AH is not against making changes. I don't think that we need the implication. I think we've seen that they're not against making changes. I think we've seen, unless you mean with against the Ogre Horde particularly, they've already made changes for several things. So I think that it's absolutely going to happen. They definitely will have changes. They're not going to be able to commit 100% to the original implementation of the game, because it was based on you having played and having experienced and having owned at the time HEROQUEST, the EU edition. So this is not HEROQUEST, the EU edition. This is very much based on the US edition and is now the global standard. So, and that's not to say, I know somebody watching misunderstood something that I had said when I sort of conflated the words US and global. And they said something about how Games Workshop was in the UK, and therefore that's the global edition. Today's HEROQUEST, today's globally available HEROQUEST from Avalon Hill is based on the US edition, just for anybody who's not clear on my perspective. I mean, at this point, I would say, how dare you confuse my perspective? But it happened. So, I mean, I gotta get over myself. I could come off as confusing. And I'm sorry. I don't want to come off as confusing. That should be pretty well known by now, though, right? This HEROQUEST is using the US rule set. So because of that, I think it's clear we're going to see a lot of changes to the Ogre Horde. In terms of balance, in terms of stats for the Ogres, because the other monsters in the quest, and this is important, are not, they're not as weak as the monsters originally would be, right? A lot of our stock monsters from the base game system, they would have had one body point. Almost every single monster had one body point. The EU version was about exploration. And when you came across a monster, it was a minor challenge. I say minor, but the EU version of Return of the Witchlord and Keller's Keep were every bit as challenging as their US counterparts, because there were so many monsters. There were so many droves of monsters. But anyways, it was absolutely more about the exploration and the teamwork. And the US gave it a little bit more of an edge, a little more challenge, competition. There were things you could do in the EU edition, as far as that went, that you couldn't do in the US. But still, they wanted to buff it up for whatever reason. And if they do that with Against the Ogre Horde, if those monsters are going to be the new global standard monsters with the US stats, then it's already a huge increase in challenge from the original. And that is what they're going to do. There's no way that they're going to reduce all of the BP of the monsters to 1, except for the ogres. So huge challenge incoming. Huge challenge incoming. It remains to be seen what they're going to do with the ogres. But I'll continue reading Kordak's comment. I rudely interrupted interrupted myself reading his comment. I think that they have possibly gotten over the fear of alienating fans by innovating. It was also mentioned that Avalon Hill is comfortable with having the 3 current expansion box sizes we have now, and given that we have yet to see a KK Rotwell-sized expansion come out, it seems very possible the 2 likeliest UK expansions, including Against the Ogre Horde, could be in that medium-sized box. I can easily imagine a large throne. So can I. I can definitely imagine a large throne. Other than that, we know that Avalon Hill has embraced going back to cardboard standee-styled elements, so the possibility of having cardboard doors and walls has to be considered. I don't see the doors, definitely, but I do see the walls. Every door has been replaced with plastic. The portcullises have been replaced with plastic. The wooden and steel doors, plastic. We have plastic doors now. Though it might be a missed opportunity to not at least make the doors plastic. I'm hoping, and to some degree expecting, that the dread spells will be cards instead of tokens. Just to interject again here, I would love if they were cards instead of tokens. I thought that the breaking away from card convention and having tokens was strange. It's something that kind of adds to the charm, though, because it's so quirky. You have these chaos spell tokens. So, but I really think that they'll do away with the tokens and have dread spells, because there's just no reason, the cards rather, there's just no reason not to. There's really no reason to go with tokens. Ultimately, other than the possible component upgrades, the most intuitive change is simply adding an additional 3 quests. I dig seeing a hugely expanded expansion, but I'm going to remain conservative in my expectations for now. I did say I hope they could go with the cards instead of the tokens. That's a convention I could easily see change from the EU counterpart. Cards fit, cards belong. Rudolph did come in with one last idea. My ideas for Against the Ogre Horde will hold. He says the book will have 3 solo quests in it. Not that I want them, but I think they will. And they put a couple of furniture and dice in there. I hope they put more optional alchemy cards in there and future expansions, but don't think they will. And please, for the love of ogres, keep the variable hit points in a way. While it's possible, definitely, for them to include the alchemy system, they don't require you, and they have not required you yet, to own any particular expansion to enjoy any of the other expansions. Avalon Hill has been very much own the base game, choose which expansion you want to play, and that's the experience. So if you have beaten the main quest, you can start in Against the Ogre Horde. There may be some lore videos that come out that have suggestions, right? They might have suggestions on kind of where things should go. There's, of course, a quest order that was put out from Avalon Hill, the Twitter jargon, I think. It's been referenced, it's been cited. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, because they're going to make these products in such a way that you are able to play any of the expansions in any order. There might be an implied storyline, but your table doesn't have to regard the elements as explicit. The implication in the storyline is not linear. It is a suggestion, but at the end of the day, we know that Avalon Hill, and this is going back to Kurgan's interview with Carmine, they want it to remain open. It's your story. When you create a barbarian, you have created the barbarian that is the main character, the barbarian of HEROQUEST. When you create a dwarf, that is the HEROQUEST dwarf that you now are. I don't care if you make an elf and name him Pickles. That is now the canonical HEROQUEST elf. Nobody can tell you otherwise. That is actually one of the few powers that you have. Immutable, irrefutable powers as a hero player. When you take that character sheet and you make your character, that is your character. That is the character that's going through the dungeon. I may have said a few things in the podcast that were controversial this time around. 3 extra quests, whether they're solo or group, is very likely. I would love to see the variable hit points kept in some way. I would just love to see it kept. I think the Ogre throne, but I'm not sure about the other pieces of Ogre furniture. If Avalon Hill wants to dump a huge amount of plastic onto my game shelf, and trust me, I'll let them. They can do that. They're allowed. Then I could see this being a big box expansion if they have giant pieces of furniture, just an enormous bookshelf, enormous fireplace. And I mean, they don't have to be so big that they take up more than the tiles they're supposed to. They can just be themed to be slightly bigger, substantially taller. The elements can be superimposed. They can be much larger elements on the pieces of furniture. So when you go into a given room, instead of having this measly table that takes up 6 tiles for whatever reason, you've got a table bursting at the seams, easily taking up all 6 of those tiles. One that's almost difficult to stand next to without encroaching onto its space or it encroaching onto yours. I think that that's a possibility there. For sure. That would definitely increase the box size. Other than that, I think it's time to see more dice or more character pads or more things that are more about the flavor of the experience rather than adding to what's on the board. Anyway, guys, that's the BWODECAST. I will be putting the next topic in the Discord, so please feel free to join and chat with me about the podcast subject of the week, and we'll see about getting more guests on the show. Guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, I really appreciate all of you. Comment anything you'd like down below, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Until then, bye for now and onward.